The transport ship landed on Kylara Prime, the heavy thud that shook the metal platform. Dr. Taman stepped out into the harsh morning light and immediately felt the planet's anger. The wind carried dust that stung his eyes and the smell of sulfur from the mining operations. This was not a world that welcomed visitors. "Welcome to paradise," said G1, his research assistant, as she pulled her equipment bag from the ship. She had to shout over the noise of the mining drills that never stopped working. "Are you sure we need to be here for 6 months?" Taman smiled, despite the uncomfortable conditions. As a xenobiologist, he had studied alien life forms for 15 years, but he had never been to a planet like this one. Kylara Prime was home to over 12 different species, all working together in one of the galaxy's most dangerous mining colonies. The planet was rich in rare metals, but it was also home to some of the most feared creatures in known space. The landing platform was busy with activity. Tall, thin aliens with green scales worked alongside short, round creatures covered in brown fur. Flying insects the size of humans buzzed overhead, carrying supplies in their many arms. It was like a bizarre marketplace where everyone spoke different languages but somehow understood each other. "Dr. Taman?" A deep voice spoke behind him. He turned to see a Kalari approaching. The reptilian alien stood 7 feet tall, with dark green scales and bright yellow eyes. "I am Sethik, the colony administrator. We have been waiting for you." Taman bowed slightly, following human diplomatic customs. "Thank you for having us. I am excited to study the wildlife here." Sethik's expression became serious. His yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Before we begin, there are rules you must understand. These rules are not suggestions. They are the difference between life and death." "What?" Guan moved closer to Taman. She had read about Kylara Prime during their journey, but hearing the warning in person made her nervous. "The most important rule," Sethik continued, "concerns the Vorthok. Do you know about them?" Taman nodded. "Large predators, very dangerous. They live in the northern canyons." "Large is not the right word," Sethik said. "They are 12 feet tall and weigh as much as your transport ship. Their claws can cut through metal like paper. Their hide is so thick that plasma weapons barely scratch them. But size and strength are not what make them truly dangerous." They walked away from the landing platform toward the main colony buildings. The structures were built low and strong, designed to survive the planet's frequent storms. Between the buildings, Taman could see different species working together, but he noticed something strange. Everyone moved carefully, always watching the horizon toward the north. "What makes them dangerous?" G1 asked. "Their memory," Sethik replied. "A Vorthok never forgets. If you harm their young, they will hunt you across the galaxy. They will find you, no matter where you hide. They will kill you, your family, your friends, and everyone you have ever known." They entered the main building, which served as both a meeting hall and a shelter during storms. The walls were covered with warnings in dozens of languages. Most showed the same image, a massive creature with claws and teeth, standing over a smaller version of itself. The message was clear even without words. 3 species have been completely destroyed because they made the mistake of approaching a Vorthok cub, Sethik explained. The Torvani were a proud warrior race of over 50 billion individuals. They existed for 10,000 years. Are extinct because one of their soldiers touched a Vorthok cub during a battle. The Vorthok hunted them to every world, every moon, every space station. It took 200 years, but they found them all. Taman felt a chill run down his spine. All of them. Every single one, Sethik confirmed. The Helok tried to hide in the dark spaces between stars. The Vorthok found them. The Quillish fled to another galaxy. The Vorthok followed. When a Vorthok marks you for death, there is no escape. They sat at a large table where several other species representatives were waiting. A Threx, one of the insect-like creatures, clicked its mandibles in what Taman recognized as a greeting. Next to it sat a small, furry Corvin who smelled like flowers and metal. But surely, G1 said, there must be some way to make peace with them. The Threx made a sound like laughter, but there was no humor in it. "Peace. Young human, the Vorthok do not negotiate. They do not forgive. They do not forget." We share this planet with them because we follow the rules. We stay away from their territory. We never go near their young. We never interfere with their hunting. The arrangement works," added the Corvin in a high, musical voice. "For 30 years, this colony has operated without incident. The Vorthok allow us to mine the southern regions. We provide them with metal tools and weapons. But the balance is delicate." Sethek pulled out a map of the planet. The southern half was marked with mining sites and colony buildings. The northern half was colored red with warnings in multiple languages. Everything north of the Rozak River is Vorthok territory. The northern canyons are where they raise their young. No one goes there, ever. "What if someone accidentally crosses the line?" Taman asked. "There are no accidents," Sethek said firmly. "The river is clearly marked. There are warning beacons every 100 meters. The Vorthok themselves patrol the border. If you see one of them, you turn around immediately and leave the area." Juan studied the map carefully. "What about aerial surveys? Can we fly over their territory?" "Absolutely not," the Threx replied. "The Vorthok can leap 50 meters straight up. They've brought down survey ships before. Pilots were found. Days later, scattered across several square kilometers. But surely they must be reasonable," Taman said. "They are intelligent creatures. They use tools. They have social structures." "Intelligence does not mean mercy," Sethek warned. "Vorthok are intelligent enough to plan perfect revenge. They are patient enough to wait centuries for the right moment. They are skilled enough to hunt across the galaxy. Their intelligence makes them more dangerous, not less." The meeting continued for 2 hours, as the colony representatives explained. The complex balance that kept the peace. Different species had different roles. Kaleri handled administration and diplomacy. The Threx managed the automated mining equipment. The Corvin processed and refined the extracted materials. Smaller species handled transportation and communications, and everyone without exception stayed away from the Vorthok. "Your research will be valuable," Sethek said as the meeting ended. "But remember, Dr. Taman, curiosity can be deadly here. Study the creatures in the safe zones. Document the plants and insects. Learn about the ecosystem. But never, never approach a Vorthok cub." As they left the meeting hall, G1 looked troubled. "Do you think we made a mistake coming here?" Taman looked toward the northern horizon, where the red canyons stretched into the distance. Somewhere out there, the most dangerous predators in the galaxy were raising their young. Every species in the colony lived in fear of accidentally provoking them. "No," he said finally. "This is exactly where we need to be. But we will be very, very careful." Neither of them knew that in just 3 days, everything would change. 3 days after arriving on Kylara Prime, Taman and G1 began their first field expedition. They traveled in a small hover vehicle with their Kylari guide, Vex, who had been working on the planet for over 10 years. The morning air was cool and carried the scent of strange flowers that only bloomed in the early hours. "The mineral deposits we found yesterday are very unusual," Taman said, checking his scanner readings. "I've never seen anything like them in 15 years. Of research." Vex nodded, his green scales catching the sunlight. "The geology here is unique. The planet's core produces rare elements that exist nowhere else in the galaxy. But we must be careful where we explore." They were traveling along the southern edge of the mining territory, following a winding path that led toward the foothills. Of the northern canyons, the landscape was beautiful in a harsh way. Red rocks jutted up from the ground like giant teeth, and purple grass grew in patches between the stones. Strange birds with 4 wings flew overhead, calling to each other in musical voices. "Look at those formations," Juan said, pointing to a series of tall rock pillars. "The way the minerals have crystallized is amazing. I need to take samples." They stopped the vehicle near a cluster of the crystal formations. Taman set up his equipment, while G1 prepared the sample containers. Vex kept watch, his yellow eyes constantly scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. "These crystals contain trace amounts of elements that do not exist on Earth," Taman said, excited by his discovery. "If we can understand how they form, it might help us learn about the planet's history." For 2 hours, they worked in peaceful silence. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and the temperature began to rise. Small lizards scurried between the rocks, and insects buzzed around the flowering plants. It felt like a normal research expedition. Then they heard the sound. It started as a low whimper, barely audible over the wind. Giwan looked up from her work, frowning. "Did you hear that?" Taman paused, listening carefully. The sound came again, clearer this time. It was a cry of distress, coming from somewhere ahead of them, near the edge of a deep ravine. "We should leave," Vex said immediately. His voice was tense, and his scales had darkened to a deeper green. "That sound. It is not safe." But Taman was already walking toward the ravine, his curiosity overcoming his caution. "It sounds like an animal. In trouble. Maybe it is injured." "Taman, please," Vex called after him. "We are very close to the border here. Any animal in this area could be dangerous." G1 followed Taman, though she looked nervous. "We should listen to Vex. We promised to be careful." They reached the edge of the ravine and looked down. The chasm was deep and narrow, with steep walls of red stone. At the bottom, perhaps 30 meters down, they could see the remains of a recent rock slide. Boulders and broken stone covered the ravine floor. Dust still hung in the air. The cry came again, and this time they could pinpoint its location. On a narrow ledge about halfway down the ravine wall, something small and dark was moving. "There," Taman said, pointing. "Can you see it?" G1 pulled out her binoculars and focused on the ledge. What she saw made her gasp. "Oh no. Taman, you need to see this." She handed him the binoculars. Ianan adjusted the focus and looked down at the ledge. His breath caught in his throat. It was a Vorthok cub. The young creature was about the size of a large dog, but its body was already showing the features that would make it one of the galaxy's most feared predators. Its hide was dark gray with black stripes, and small claws extended from its powerful limbs. One of its back legs was bent at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. "We have to leave," Vex said, his voice shaking. "Now, if there is a cub here, its mother cannot be far away." But Taman continued to watch the cub through the binoculars. It was trying to stand, but the broken leg made it impossible. Each time it fell, it cried out in pain and fear. The sound was heartbreaking. "Right, look at the rock slide," Taman said. Quietly, they're partially buried under the largest boulder. G1 took the binoculars and looked where he was pointing. Among the fallen rocks, she could see something that made her stomach turn. It was massive and gray, with claws longer than her arm. Only part of it was visible, but there was no doubt what it was. "The mother," she whispered. "She is dead." Tch. Cub continued to cry, its voice growing weaker with each passing minute. It was alone on the ledge, injured and unable to climb out of the ravine. Without help, it would die. "We must report this to the colony," Vex said. "The other Vorthok will come looking for the cub eventually. The colony needs to be warned." "Will they come?" Taman asked, still watching the suffering creature. "Of course they will," Vex replied. "Vorthok always care for their young. It is why they are so dangerous to anyone who threatens a cub." But as the hours passed, no adult Vorthok appeared. The cub's cries became more desperate, and it was clear that the small creature was growing weaker. The sun was beginning to set, and the temperature was dropping. "This does not make sense," Kiwan said. "If the Vorthok always protect their young, why has no one come?" Vex looked troubled. "I do not know. Perhaps the rock slide blocked their path. Or perhaps they have not heard the cub's cries." Taman studied the ravine walls carefully. The rock slide had been massive, reshaping the entire bottom of the chasm. The walls were now too unstable for a large creature to descend safely. If adult Vorthok had heard the cub's cries, they might not be able to reach it. "How long can it survive down there?" Juan asked. "Not long," Vex admitted. "Goff said need regular feeding. And with that injury, it will grow weaker quickly." As darkness fell, the cub's cries became less frequent. It was curled up on the ledge, shivering in the cold night air. Taman could see that it was fading. "We cannot just leave it there," he said finally. "We cannot help it," Vex replied firmly. "Any contact with a Vorthok cub means death. It's not just for us, but for our entire species. You heard what Sethik said. The Torvani, the Helok, the Quillish. All destroyed because they interfered with Vorthok. Young. But what if no one comes? Taman asked. What if it dies alone down there? Then it dies, Vex said sadly. It is tragic, but it is better than the alternative. They made camp at a safe distance from the ravine, but none of them could sleep. The cubs' cries echoed through the night, growing weaker with each passing hour. Juan tried to convince Timon to leave in the morning, but she could see the conflict in his eyes. You are thinking of doing something stupid, she said. I am thinking of doing something right, he replied. As the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, the cubs' cries stopped completely. In the growing light, they could see the small creature lying motionless on the ledge. Is it? G1 started to ask. Tae-Min focused the binoculars on the cub. After a long moment, he saw its chest rise and fall weakly. Still alive, but barely. Vex was already packing their equipment. We leave now. There is nothing more we can do. But Taman remained at the edge of the ravine, staring down at the dying cub. In his mind, he could hear his father's voice from many years ago. The measure of a person is not what they do when it is easy, but what they do when it is hard. Looking at the helpless creature below, Taman made a decision that would change everything. Taman stood at the edge of the ravine as the sun climbed higher in the morning sky. Below him, the Vorthok cub lay motionless on the narrow ledge. Its breathing was so weak that he could barely see its chest moving. The small creature was dying, and everyone in the galaxy would say that was how it should be. Dr. Taman Vex called from beside their vehicle. We must leave now. The longer we stay here, the more dangerous it becomes. G1 walked over to Taman and placed a hand on his shoulder. I know what you are thinking, but you cannot save every creature in the galaxy. Some things are beyond our help, are they? Taman asked quietly. Or do we just tell ourselves that to make the hard choices easier? He had been thinking about this all night. In his 15 years as a xenobiologist, he had studied hundreds of species across dozens of worlds. He had seen predators and prey, hunters and the hunted, but he had never seen anything like this situation. The cub is innocent, he said. Did not choose to be born of Vorthok, did not choose to be trapped in that ravine. It is just a frightened child, and it is going to die alone. Vex approached them, his yellow eyes filled with worry. Dr. Taman, please listen to me. I have lived on this planet for 10 years. I have seen what the Vorthok can do. If you touch that cub, you will doom not just yourself, but your entire species? But what if no adult Vorthok comes? Timon asked. What if they cannot reach it because of the rock slide? Then it dies, Vex said firmly. That is the natural order. That is how the galaxy has survived for millions of years. We do not interfere with the Vorthok. Guan studied the ravine walls with her scanner. The rock slide changed the entire structure of the chasm. Even if adult Vorthok heard the cub's cries, the walls are too unstable for them to climb down safely. See, Taman said, the cub is not just injured, it is abandoned. Its own kind cannot help it. That does not matter, Vex replied. The law is clear. No one touches a Vorthok cub, ever. Taman pulled out his equipment and began examining the ravine more carefully. The walls were steep but not impossible to climb. He had rock climbing experience from his time on Earth, and he had the right equipment with him. What are you doing? Skuan asked, though she already knew the answer. I am making a rope, Taman said, connecting several lengths of climbing cable together. The ledge is about 20 meters down. I can reach it. No, Vex said, his voice sharp with fear. I will not allow this. I will stop you if I have to. Taman looked at the Kaleri guide with calm eyes. How will you stop me, Vex? Will you hurt me? Will you kill me to prevent me from saving that cub? Vex hesitated. The idea of harming the human scientist was as unthinkable to him as touching a Vorthok cub. This is madness, G1 said. Taman, think about what you are doing. Think about Earth. Think about the millions of humans who will die when the Vorthok come for revenge. I am thinking about them, Taman replied as he secured the rope to a sturdy rock formation. I am thinking about what kind of species we want to be. Do we want to be the kind of people who let innocent creatures die because we are afraid? It keeps us alive, Vex said desperately. Fear of the Vorthok has kept this colony safe for 30 years. What kind of life is that? Taman asked. Living in constant fear, never taking risks, never doing what is right because it might be dangerous? He tested the rope's strength and began putting on his climbing harness. The equipment was designed for scientific fieldwork, but it would serve his purpose. The cub is dying, he said, simply. I can help it. That is all that matters. G1 grabbed his arm. What if you are wrong? What if the adult Vorthok do come? What if they see you with their cub? Then I will face the consequences, Taman said. But I will not let fear stop me from doing what is right. Began his descent into the ravine. The rope held his weight, and he moved carefully down the unstable wall. Loose rocks fell around him, but he continued downward. Behind him, he could hear G1 and Vex arguing in hushed voices. We have to stop him, Vex was saying. We have to contact the colony. Maybe they can convince him to come back up. It is too late, G1 replied. You know how he is when he makes up his mind. Nothing will change it. Taman reached the ledge where the cub lay. Up close, the young Vorthok was both more beautiful and more dangerous than he had expected. Its hide was covered in intricate patterns that would help it blend into the rocky terrain. Its claws, though small, were already razor-sharp. But its eyes were what struck him most. They were intelligent eyes, full of pain and fear, but also hope. The cub had heard him coming down the wall, and it was watching him with curious interest. Hello, little one, Taman said softly. I am here to help you. The cub made a small sound, almost like a purr. It did not try to attack him or run away. Instead, it seemed to understand that he was not a threat. Taman carefully examined the cub's injured leg. The bone was clearly broken, but it was a clean break that could be healed with proper care. He pulled medical supplies from his pack and began to work. Easy, he whispered as he gently straightened the leg. This might hurt, but it will help you. The cub whimpered, but did not struggle. It seemed to trust him completely, as if it knew he was trying to help. Taman created a splint from materials in his pack and carefully wrapped the injured leg. There, he said when he was finished. That should hold until we can get you proper medical attention. The cub tried to stand and found that it could put some weight on the injured leg. It looked up at Taman with what he could only describe as gratitude. Now comes the hard part, Taman said. I need to get you out of here. He created a makeshift carrier from his equipment bag and carefully placed the cub inside. The young Vorthok was surprisingly calm, as if it understood what was happening. The climb back up the ravine wall was much more difficult with the added weight. But Taman managed it. When he reached the top, he found Gi-wan and Vex waiting for him with expressions of horror and disbelief. You actually did it, Gi-wan whispered. You actually touched a Vorthok cub.
I saved a life, Taman corrected. That is what matters.
Vex was backing away from them, his scales pale with terror. You have doomed us all. The moment you touched that creature, you signed the death warrant for every human in the galaxy. Maybe, Taman said, lifting the carrier so he could look at the cub. But I would rather die trying to do good than live doing nothing. The cub looked up at him with its intelligent eyes and made a soft sound that might have been contentment. For the first time in hours, it seemed peaceful. What do we do now? G1 asked. Now we take care of him, Taman said. And we wait to see what happens. Word of what he had done would spread quickly through the colony. Ships would begin leaving the planet as other species fled in terror. The galaxy would hold its breath, waiting to see if the Vorthok would come for their revenge. But for now, Taman had a young creature that needed his help. Everything else could wait. The news spread through the colony faster than a wildfire. Within 2 hours of returning from the ravine, everyone on Kylara Prime knew what Dr. Taman had done. Human had touched a Vorthok cub. The impossible had happened, and now everyone was waiting for the consequences. Tay-Min set up a medical station in his quarters, ignoring the chaos outside. The cub, which he had decided to call Baram, after the Korean word for wind, was resting on a soft blanket. Its broken leg was properly splinted now, and Taman had given it medicine for the pain. You are surprisingly calm for a creature that is supposed to be the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, Taman said, as he checked Baram's vital signs. The cub looked up at him with curious eyes and made a soft rumbling sound. Gi-1 burst through the door, her face pale with worry. The landing platform is chaos, she said. 3 ships have already left, and 5 more are preparing to launch. The Threx hive mind has declared a planetary evacuation order. Let them leave if they want to, Taman said calmly. Baram needs food and rest, not panic. Baram, G1 asked. You named it? Taman corrected. And yes, I named him. He is not just some creature. He is an individual with his own personality. As if responding to his words, Baram lifted his head and looked at G1. The cub studied her for a moment, then made a small chirping sound that seemed almost like a greeting. He was trying to communicate, Taman said with excitement. Look at his body language. He is not showing any aggression or fear. He is being social. Outside, they could hear shouting and the sound of vehicles racing toward the landing platform. The colony was falling apart as different species tried to flee the planet before the Vorthok arrived for revenge. Sethik appeared in the doorway, his green scales darker than usual with stress. Dr. Taman, the Elder Council, has called an emergency. Meeting, they want to discuss. Your situation? My situation? Taman asked, without looking up from Baram. They want to discuss whether to execute you immediately, Sethik said bluntly. Some believe that if they kill you and present your body to the Vorthok, it might satisfy their need for revenge. G1 gasped, but Taman remained calm. What do you think, Sethik? The Kalari administrator looked at the cub, which was now trying to stand on its 3 good legs. I think it is too late for that. You have already broken the most sacred law in the galaxy. The Vorthok will come whether you are alive or dead. Then there's no point in killing me, Taman said logically. I might as well continue caring for Baram. Over the next 3 days, the colony population dropped from over 2,000 to less than 300. Ships launched every few hours, carrying terrified aliens to other worlds. The Corvin left first, followed by most of the Threx workers. Even some of the Kalari who had lived on the planet for decades decided to flee, but not everyone left. A few brave souls remained either because they could not afford passage off-world or because they were too curious to leave. They watched from a distance as Taman cared for the cub, waiting to see what would happen. Dr. Sujin arrived on the 4th day, much to everyone's surprise. She was a human linguist who had been working at a research station on the other side of the galaxy. When she heard about what Taman had done, she immediately traveled to Kalara Prime. Are you completely insane? She asked when she found Taman in his quarters. Then she saw Baram and stopped talking. The cub had grown stronger over the past few days. His broken leg was healing well, and he was able to walk short distances with only a slight limp. More importantly, he had bonded completely with Taman. Wherever the human went, Baram followed. When Taman worked at his desk, the cub would curl up at his feet. When Taman slept, Baram would lie beside his bed, keeping watch. This is incredible, Sujin whispered. I have studied Vorthok behavior for 10 years, but I have never seen anything like this. What do you mean? Taman asked. According to every report I have read, Vorthok are solitary hunters who only come together to mate. They do not form social bonds outside of their immediate family groups, yet this cub has clearly bonded with you. Baram approached Sujin cautiously. He sniffed her hand, then sat down and looked up at her expectantly. When she reached out to pet him, he rumbled with pleasure. He trusts humans, Sujin said in amazement. Or at least he trusts you, and he is extending that trust to me. Intelligence runs in his species, Taman said. He understands that. I helped him. Maybe he understands more than we think. Sujin spent the next day studying Baram and reviewing her research notes. What she discovered troubled her. Something does not make sense, she told Taman that evening. According to every study ever done on Vorthok behavior, an adult should have come for this cub within hours of its distress calls. Maybe they could not reach him because of the rock slide, Taman suggested. That is what I thought too, but I have been analyzing the data. Adult Vorthok have been seen in this region regularly for the past 5 years. They patrol the border between their territory and the colony, yet no adult has been spotted in this area for over 2 weeks. What does that mean? Sujin looked at Baram, who was playing with a small toy that Taman had made for him. I think it means that the adults knew about the rock slide. They knew the cub was trapped. They chose not to help him. That is impossible, Taman, I said. Every species in the galaxy knows that Vorthok will do anything to protect their young. Every species believes that, Sujin corrected. But what if we are wrong? What if there is something about Vorthok behavior that we do not understand? Before Taman could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the colony. The warning sirens meant only one thing. Vorthok had been detected approaching the settlement. They have come, Sujin said, her voice filled with fear. Tate Ashman picked up Baram, who seemed to sense the tension in the air. The cub made worried sounds and pressed closer to his human protector. Whatever happens, Taman said, I will not abandon him. Outside, the remaining colonists were running for shelter. Emergency broadcasts filled the air, warning everyone to stay indoors and avoid all contact with the approaching Vorthok. The moment that everyone had been dreading was finally here. Long-range sensors showed a massive hunting pack moving toward the colony. There were at least 20 adult Vorthok, led by what appeared to be an enormous matriarch. They were moving with purpose, heading directly for the human quarters where Taman and Baram waited. This is it, G1 said, joining them at the window. They have come for their cub. For me, Taman added quietly. But as he held Baram close, he noticed something strange. The cub was not trying to call out to the approaching adults. Instead, he seemed nervous, almost afraid. His body language suggested that he did not want to be found by his own kind. Baram Taman whispered, What are you not telling us? The hunting pack was getting closer. Soon, they would reach the colony, and Taman would finally learn the truth about Vorthok behavior. He just hoped he would live long enough to understand it. The Vorthok hunting pack stopped just outside the colony's perimeter as the sun began to set. Through his binoculars, Taman could see them clearly for the first time. They were even more magnificent and terrifying than he had imagined. Each adult stood 12 feet tall, with muscles that rippled under their thick hide. Their claws caught the dying light like polished metal. Why have they stopped? Giwan asked nervously. Are they not attacking? Sujin was studying the pack. Through her own equipment. Look at their behavior, she said. They are not acting like hunters approaching prey. They are acting like they are investigating something. The largest Vorthok, clearly the matriarch, was sniffing the air and making low rumbling sounds. The other adults spread out in a careful pattern, but they did not advance toward the colony buildings. In Taman's arms, Baram was trembling. The cub made small whimpering sounds and tried to hide his face against the human's chest. This was not the behavior of a young animal being reunited with its family. Something is wrong, Taman said. Baram is afraid of them. Now that does not make sense, G1 replied. They are his own kind. You should be here to rescue him. Sujin suddenly straightened up from her equipment. I have been analyzing their chemical signals. Vorthok communicate partially through scent, and I think I understand what is happening. What do you mean? Taman asked. The matriarch is not Baram's mother, Sujin explained. Her scent signature is completely different. More importantly, the pack is showing signs of ... rejection. They know Baram is here. Sujin continued. But they are not trying to retrieve him. They are trying to determine if he is still part of their social structure. Taman felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying they might abandon him? I am saying they already have, Sujin said quietly. Think about it. Baram's mother died in the rock slide. No other adult claimed him within the critical bonding period. In Vorthok society, that makes him an outcast. But every species in the galaxy knows that Vorthok protects their young, G1 protested. They protect the young that belong to them, Sujin corrected. But what happens to cubs that lose their parents and are not adopted by other adults? What happens to the ones that the pack rejects? The answer hit Taman like a physical blow. They become invisible. The pack acts as if they do not exist. Exactly, Sujin said. And if other species knew this, they might try to exploit abandoned cubs. So the Vorthok created the myth that they protect all their young equally. The fear keeps other species away from both protected and abandoned cubs.
Outside.
The matriarch was making a series of complex vocalizations. Other members of the pack responded with their own calls. To Taman, it sounded like they were having a conversation. You're deciding what to do, Sujin, translated roughly. The matriarch is asking if anyone claims the cub. No one is responding positively. Bahram whimpered again and pressed closer to Taman. The cub seemed to understand what was happening better than the humans did. So what does this mean for us? Gyuan asked. It means, said a new voice from the doorway, that everything we thought we knew about the Vorthok was wrong. They turned to see Vex entering the room. The Kaleri guide looked exhausted and frightened, but he was carrying a small device that was making soft beeping sounds. Translation equipment, he explained. I have been listening to their communications. Dr. Sujin is correct. They are not here to rescue the cub. They are here to determine if anyone has claimed it, and if no one has. Taman asked, though he already suspected the answer. Then they will leave it to die, Vex said. That is the Vorthok way. Only cubs with protectors are considered part of the pack.
Oh.
The matriarch's vocalizations became more complex. Through the translator, they could hear fragments of meaning. Abandoned, no claim, human sent. They know I have been caring for him, Taman realized. Yes, Vex confirmed.
God.
The pack continued their discussion for over an hour. As darkness fell, their voices became more animated. Some of the younger adults seemed agitated, while the matriarch remained calm and thoughtful. What are they arguing about? Juan asked. Su-Jin was frantically taking notes as she listened to the translations. It is unprecedented, she said. A member of another species has claimed one of their abandoned cubs. They have no cultural framework for dealing with this situation. Some of them want to kill the human and take the cub, Vex translated. But others are saying that would violate their own laws about abandoned young. Their laws? Taman asked. Once a cub is abandoned by the pack, it ceases to be Vorthok property, Sujin explained. It becomes ... nothing. And if another being claims it and cares for it, that being has the right to keep it. In Taman's arms, Bahram had stopped trembling. The cub seemed to sense that the immediate danger was passing. He looked up at his human protector with trusting eyes and made a soft purring sound. He understands, Taman whispered. He knows that his own kind rejected him, and he knows that I chose to accept him. The argument outside was reaching its climax. The matriarch's voice rose above the others, and gradually the pack fell silent. She was making a decision. What is she saying? Gyuan asked urgently. Vex listened carefully to the translation device. She is invoking the ancient laws. She is declaring that the cub was properly abandoned according to Vorthok custom. She is recognizing the human's claim as valid. Does that mean ... Taman started to ask. It means, Sujin said with amazement, that you are now officially Bahram's adoptive parent in the eyes of Vorthok society. The matriarch made one final, complex vocalization that seemed to carry across the entire colony. Then, without warning, the pack began to move away from the settlement. They are leaving, G1 said in disbelief. They are actually leaving. But the matriarch stopped at the edge of the colony perimeter and turned back toward the human quarters. She made a single, clear sound that the translator rendered as summons. She wants to see you, Vex said, his voice shaking. She wants to see the human who claimed the abandoned cub. Taman looked down at Bahram, who was watching him with intelligent eyes. The cub made a small sound that seemed to say, "It will be okay." Then I guess I should not keep her waiting, Taman said. As he prepared to meet the most feared predator in the galaxy, Taman realized that everything was about to change. Not just for him and Bahram, but for the understanding between species. Throughout the galaxy, the truth about Vorthok society was about to be revealed, and humanity was about to take its place in a much larger story. Taman walked slowly toward the colony perimeter, carrying Bahram in his arms. Behind him, G1, Sujin, and Vex followed at a respectful distance. The remaining colonists watched from windows and doorways, hardly daring to breathe. The matriarch, waited at the edge of the settlement, her massive form silhouetted against the night sky. She was even larger than Taman had thought, with scars across her hide that spoke of countless battles. Her eyes, however, were not filled with rage or hunger. They were filled with something that looked almost like curiosity. Remember Sujin? Whispered in Vorthok society, direct eye contact is a sign of respect between equals. Do not look away. Taman approached until he was just 10 meters from the matriarch. This close, he could smell her scent. Earth and metal and something. Wild that spoke of endless hunts across alien worlds. Her breathing was deep and measured, and her claws scraped softly against the rocky ground. Bahram stirred in his arms and made a soft sound. The matriarch's head tilted slightly, focusing on the cub. For a moment, Taman thought he saw something, like sadness in her ancient eyes. Then she spoke, her voice a deep rumble that seemed to come from the very center of the earth. The translation device rendered her words, "Small one, you were lost to us." Bahram responded with a series of chirps and rumbles. Taman could not understand the language, but the emotion was clear. The cub was not angry or resentful.
He was.
Simply stating facts, he is telling her that he understands, Sujin translated quietly. He knows that his mother's death made him an outcast, accepts it. The matriarch's gaze shifted to Taman. She spoke again, her voice carried the weight of millennia. Human, you claimed what we could not keep. You protected what we had to abandon. This is not the way of your people. Taman looked directly into her eyes as he replied, "It is the way of this human. I could not let him die alone." Many would have, the matriarch observed. Fear of our revenge stops most species from approaching our young. Even abandoned young. I was afraid, Taman admitted. But fear is not a good reason to let an innocent creature suffer. The matriarch studied him for a long moment. Then she did something that no one expected. She lowered her massive head in what could only be described as a bow of respect. "You have shown honor," she said. "You have given life where we could give only death. By our ancient laws, the abandoned one is yours to raise." She paused, then added something that made Sujin gasp. "But he will not forget his true nature. And neither must you." "What does that mean?" Taman asked. The matriarch gestured to the pack behind her. "We will return each season to see how he grows. We will teach him the songs of his people and the ways of the hunt. No, he will be Vorthok. In spirit, even if he can never be Vorthok in law." Bahram made excited sounds, as if he understood the promise being made. The matriarch responded with a complex vocalization that sounded almost like a lullaby. She is singing him the song of naming. Sujin translated, tears in her eyes. She is giving him a Vorthok name to go with his human one. The song continued for several minutes, beautiful and haunting in the night air. When it ended, the matriarch spoke one more time. "His name among our people will be Kethroven, the one who bridges two worlds." She turned to Timon again. "Human, you have given us a gift we did not expect. You have shown us that honor exists beyond our own species. For this, we offer you something that has never been given to an outsider." The matriarch made a complex gesture with her claws, and the entire pack responded with a harmonious vocalization. The sound sent chills down Taman's spine. "What are they doing?" Giwan whispered. "They are making him an honorary member of the pack," Vex said in amazement. "They are giving him the protection of the Vorthok." The ceremony continued for nearly an hour. Each member of the pack approached Taman and touched him gently with one claw, marking him with their scent. Bahram watched with obvious joy, making happy sounds throughout the process. When it was finished, the matriarch delivered a final message. "Let it be known throughout the galaxy that the human Taman is under our protection. He who harms the Bridgemaker harms the pack. He who threatens the cub threatens us all." As the pack prepared to leave, the matriarch had one last conversation with Bahram. The cub listened carefully, then chirped his understanding. "What did she tell him?" Taman asked. "She reminded him that he has two families now," Sujin translated. "His Vorthok heritage and his human bond. She told him to honor both." The pack melted away into the darkness as silently as they had come. Within minutes, the only sign of their presence was the lingering scent of wild places and ancient hunts. In the days that followed, word of what had happened spread throughout the galaxy. The story of the human who saved an abandoned Vorthok cub became legend. More importantly, it changed how other species viewed both humanity and the Vorthok. For the first time in galactic history, other species learned the truth about Vorthok society. They discovered that the feared predators had their own code of honor, their own complex laws, and their own capacity for respect and gratitude. The mining colony on Kailara Prime became something unique, a diplomatic station where humans served. As intermediaries between the Vorthok and other species, Taman established the first interspecies wildlife sanctuary, Barum as its first resident and unofficial ambassador. As the months passed, Barum grew stronger and larger, but he never lost his gentle nature or his bond with Taman. He learned to hunt from visiting Vorthok teachers, but he also learned compassion from his human family. He became exactly what his Vorthok name suggested, a bridge between two worlds. Other species began to seek out humans when they needed to communicate with the Vorthok. Trade agreements were negotiated with human translators. Territorial disputes were resolved through human mediation. Humanity found its place in the galaxy not as conquerors or traders, but as the species willing to reach across the void of fear and misunderstanding. Years later, when Taman was asked why he had risked everything to save one abandoned cub, his answer was simple: because it was the right thing to do. Sometimes that is reason enough. Barum, now fully grown but still gentle, with those he trusted, would often lie beside Taman as he worked. The great predator, who could hunt across star systems, was content to be a companion to the human who had given him life, when his own kind could not. Their story became a symbol throughout the galaxy, proof that compassion could bridge any gap, that understanding could overcome any fear, and that sometimes the greatest strength was simply the willingness to help someone in need. In the end, Taman had been right. Fear was not a good reason to let innocents suffer. And in choosing compassion over caution, humanity had found its greatest gift to the stars, the ability to build bridges where others saw only walls. The galaxy was a larger, stranger, and more wonderful place because one human had decided that an abandoned cub deserved a chance to live. And in saving Barum, Taman had saved something in humanity itself. The knowledge that doing right mattered more than staying safe. The story of the human and the Vorthok cub would be told for generations. A reminder that in a universe full of wonders and terrors, the greatest miracle of all was simple kindness between strangers.